In this video, we're going to have a look at some of the MIDI options we have with LFO Tool. So first of all, in Logic, I'm going to set up LFO Tool so we can actually control the LFO graph that we choose using our MIDI keyboard. So first of all, I'm just going to bypass the LFO Tool, which is sitting on our bass line. Now what I need to do is make a new software instrument track, and from the instrument menu, I'm going to go down to AU MIDI-Controlled Effects. I'm going to choose LFO Tool. Now this means we can control LFO Tool using our MIDI keyboard. What we can basically do is use our MIDI notes from our MIDI keyboard to determine which LFO shape is going to affect the different parameters within the LFO routing section. Okay, so what we have to do is under the sidechain menu, choose the instrumental track for our bassline. And next I'm going to bypass or mute, I should say, the bassline channel so we don't hear it twice. So now the bassline is actually coming through this other photo channel. So we have the volume being affected by the other photo shape. I'm just going to switch that off, and I'm going to apply the cutoff to bring up some resonance and some drums. We're going to make this really audible. Okay, so in our first shape, I'll leave that as it is. The second one, let's choose something different. Third one, choose a different one again. And same for the fourth one. I'll also change some of the speeds of these as well, just so we can really hear the difference. Okay, so what we can basically do is use our MIDI keyboard to change these numbers. So we're going to basically be routing different shapes to the filter cutoff. Now it's the first of May octaves of the MIDI keyboard from the bottom, so the lowest 5 octaves that are going to do this. So you'll see as I press my MIDI keyboard C-2, C#-2, and so on. It's changing this number. So let's do it in practice. Okay, sounds dreadful, but you get the idea. That's how you can control it. The next octave up, we're then going to affect the resonance, the octave up from that, the volume, and so on and so forth. So in that way, you can kind of play LFO Tool live and create different shapes that you can then play using the MIDI keyboard. Very cool. Okay, let's have a look at altering LFO playback by MIDI notes. So what I've just added here is a little arpeggiated pattern, choosing the ARP in Logic and Omnisphere. So I'll make a new track, software instrument track. And then from here, I'm going to choose AU MIDI-Controlled Effects, LFO Tool, Stereo. Okay, so now, same as before, I need to route the sound through. Now in Logic, this version of Logic, the latest version, you can sidechain an instrument track. If you've got a previous version of Logic, you'll need to bus that and place the bus in the sidechain option. But the latest version of Logic allows you to do this. If you're using another DAW, then refer to instructions for your own DAW and how to set up a MIDI-controlled effect. Okay, so what we can do now is use these options down here to control some of the parameters of LFO Tool. So let's start with note retrigger. So now we can hear that it's just playing through LFO Tool. If I switch this on here, this is going to allow me to retrigger at a photo whenever I press a note. Okay, let's put this on to the filter cutoff. Basically, whenever I press a note, we're going to retrigger LFO Tool. Try a different shape. Now there's 2 different modes for this. We can have it in this mode with this musical note highlighted, or if we click again, it becomes an envelope. Now this makes LFO Tool really just like an envelope because the LFO will actually stop at the end of the cycle rather than moving around. It's really fun to play to come you with kind of interesting patterns. Okay, so the next one is note gate. This basically halts the LFO cycle when a note off message is received. So in other words, you can hold down a key and basically bring an LFO tool. And what's cool, we can actually use these in conjunction. So let's say we wanted to have the note gate and the note we trigger together. notes routed to affect the pulse width of the LFO cycle. I don't really know how much you're going to use this one, but this is what it does. So if we actually drew in some notes that had different velocities and were a little bit more rhythmic about it, then that may be able to create some interesting effects. Okay, so next up we have the note to the LFO rate. Let's just reset the pulse width there. Now this is going to CPU and slow down the LFO depending on what you play. Pretty cool. So it allows you to play out a phone in a kind of rhythmic way again. So finally, we have the note cutoff. Now let's just put this back so we're not doing any actual out-of-phone modulation. Let's just use a static cutoff like so. Let's add a bit of resonance in there. So this allows you to play the cutoff with the keyboard. Now once again, if we were to actually do this with a little bit more care and attention using a MIDI region, I'm sure we can come up with some interesting effects. So let's put it 16ths. I'm going to use Shift and Option to just move these by octaves. Do it randomly. I have no idea what this is going to sound like, but that's what happy accidents are all about. Okay, this is quite interesting. Now we could bring this in with some actual traditional LFO shape modulation of the cutoff as well. Yeah, so you can create some quite interesting rhythms that way. So lots of experiment with there and great ways to allow you to even introduce more playability and groove into other photo tool. Thanks for watching.